Morning again, everyone. Saturday, October 25, 2025. Good old 710 KNUS, October 25. 72 will be the high today, and then late showers tomorrow, Sunday, 70. 63 degrees on Monday, Jerry Schimmel at noon. But on September the 7th, 1967, near the town of Alamosa, San Luis Valley, Snippy, a 3-year-old Appaloosa, failed to return to the Harry King Ranch where she was stabled. 2 days later, Mr. King, the ranch owner, discovers Snippy's remains roughly a quarter mile from the ranch house. According to his account, the neck and the head had been completely stripped of flesh, leaving nothing but bare, seemingly sun-bleached white bone, and the remainder of the mare remained unscathed. Please say good morning and welcome to 710. We got an echo. 710 KNUS. Katie Paige is with us. Hey, where's the bounce coming from, pal? We'll figure it out. Katie, good morning, and welcome to 710 KNUS, the new book on Snippy. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Good morning, Peter, and good morning, everybody out there in the Colorado area.
Where are we speaking to you from?
I'm up there right by the Wolf Center in Florissant, Colorado, behind Pikes Peak. It's a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky.
It's going to be beautiful here. Good. Your background, please, and how did you get on to Snippy, and just take it from there.
Right. So my background goes back, moved to Colorado in 1970. 1973, my mom starts dating a gentleman who owned a strange, mysterious place that had a rash of cattle mutilations in the mid to late 70s. So I was a young girl out there at the time experiencing these high strangeness things that kind of got me curious about asking the question what was going on out there all those years. My story's been featured on History Channel's Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, season 1, 2, and 3. So if anybody's curious about that, that's kind of how I got started in all of this, and then joined MUFON years ago, which is the Mutual UFO Network, became Colorado State Director. But I have since passed the torch on that, and as fate would have it, a gentleman by the name of Kerry King, who is Aunt Nellie Lewis's great-nephew, contacted me, and he runs these events now out in the San Luis Valley. And for the last 3 years, I've been out there at these events and kind of we reopened the whole Snippy case from 1967, over 6 months of re-examining the case, and boy, oh boy, has that been a rabbit hole.
I can only imagine. The whole UFO phenomenon, I think is the best way to say it, has really returned, has it not? All these videos now from fighter pilots and people seeing things go into the sea, come out of the sea. As a little kid, I was really drawn to this, and I was go to the movies on Friday night, and they always showed sci-fi films. And even now, as an old guy, I'll find sci-fi stuff on the cables, and I'm always drawn to it. So explain away that first, because there's so much to UFOlogy, and now this. What are your thoughts?
Right. 10 years ago, people would kind of snicker at what I do, and that's changed in the last 5 years or so. People are getting more comfortable sharing their experiences and being more open about all these strange things that come in and out of our lives from time to time. Big question for me, though, I think a vast majority of what we see is secret tech, black access projects and things like that. So the disclosure movement has been big at the forefront for the past several years. And as you know, Peter, we kind of take little baby steps forward and then kind of get pushed back again. So it's an interesting topic, to say the least. But yeah, I think it's much more accepted now to talk about these things. And pilots, men and women, are coming forward in the military, sharing what they've experienced as well.
Yeah. The whole Area 51, I think, is what you're alluding to. And, what it's 51 always gets attention. Roswell gets attention. And when it's on television, I'll watch it, which, is that I'll go to the shows. And I semi-remember, when the book dropped, I semi-remember Snippy. So tell the story of Snippy the horse.
Yeah, this is interesting, and where it's really been fascinating for me, the Rocky Mountain Ranch, as seen on Beyond Skinwalker, was investigated by a psychologist out of Laramie, Wyoming, by the name of Dr. Leo Sprinkle, PhD. And it just so happens that Dr. Leo Sprinkle was also part of APRO, which is the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. And so Dr. Sprinkle did a lot of investigating and research on the Snippy case in the San Luis Valley as well. Now, September 7th, 1967, I know it was a lot of years ago, but why this is coming to the forefront again after all these years is because David Marler houses, it's at his National UFO Research Historical Center out there in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, which for us is not too far of a drive. So if anybody's ever curious to look at the vast amounts of information and data, reports and recordings and photographs in ufology, I would highly recommend going to the National UFO Historical Record Center website and planning a visit out there. It's open to the public now, and they house original Project Blue Book files and NICAP and APRO and CUFOS and all really big private collections of data as well. So long story short, the elusive APRO files were recently acquired by David Marler out there, and they were missing for over 35 years.
Wow.
Well, they had all the original recordings and photographs and documents on the Snippy case. And that's how this all came to be. So to see never before seen photos of the event, and there were hundreds of photos. And one of the big questions was in the late 80s, Burl Lewis changed the name of the horse from a male 3-year-old Appaloosa colt named Snippy to a mare named Lady. And what was really cool, Peter, is at the archives I got to see the first known photographs of Mother Lady with her 3-year-old colt Snippy.
Ah.
And the whole so Snippy was actually born in Estes Park, Colorado. And so to know about his mother and his father and just the whole lineage of Snippy in general, and to see photos of him for the first time, we had his bones analyzed. So we do know that Snippy, that whole dispute could be put to rest. He was a 3-year-old Appaloosa male colt.
There was, I'll put an umbrella here, cattle mutilations. And what dates do you put on the beginning of cattle mutilations, and what was that all about? Because Snippy clearly qualifies as a mutilation, or I think he does, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, Snippy was really the first worldwide recognized mutilation, but in researching the Snippy case, animal mutilations predate Snippy. So, we found early reports in the early 1940s of animal mutilations, and who knows, maybe it predated that as well. But Snippy was really the one that kind of made headlines. Before viral was viral, Snippy went viral around the world making headlines. And what was fascinating for both Tony Angiola and I wrote the book. I'm the co-author of that book. But in reinvestigating the case, there was so much more to this case than just a mutilated animal. In fact, the ranch next to the King Ranch was known as the Dead Cow Ranch because they had so many animal mutilations going on at the time from 1966 to 1967. In fact, there was another horse pastured on the King Ranch named Smokey. He was a black, 14 hands high, 1,200 pounds, and he was found dead just the week before Snippy. Many UFO and orb sightings in and out of Mount Blanca, trace ground evidence, burn marks. There was even a strange type of weird tool that was taken to the Condon Committee and analyzed. So there was much more to this case than I ever even knew, a lot of which even connected to the activity in Elbert County back in the 70s. So many connections were made.
Our guest is Katie Paige. The book is about Snippy, the horse, and the cattle mutilations that go with. All right, so before we come back to the nuts and bolts, for all the money and what's behind the curtain and the new car, who did what to Snippy, and what do you think? I mean, and again, belief is powerful of what is going on or what went on with cattle mutilations, i.e. Snippy. I'll turn it over to you. It's all yours.
Well, that's a really good question, and I wish I had the answers to that. I mean, one of the big questions I always had, because we do know even in the mid-'70s out in Elbert County, there was a rash of these unmarked helicopters. So how much of it, is our own military testing groundwater. A lot of these animal mutilations throughout the Midwest occur downwind of, nuclear test sites or storage facilities and things like that. So that's always been kind of a question, but through all the decades, there has not been a lot of really compelling evidence to show that the vast majority are man-made. So I feel like there's something very unusual going on here. I tend to stay pretty grounded, and I don't like to jump to UFOs and little green men.
I know.
But I mean, there's so many mysterious cases of these animal deaths, and not just cow and calves, but horse and dog and sheep. And even talking to researchers around the world, even in the UK, they have animal mutilations of kangaroo and other animals like this. So it's a strange worldwide phenomenon. I'm not really sure where the answers lie, but in the case of Snippy the horse, there was so much more to this case that it really gets one thinking, like, what could this be, I
remember black helicopters quite well. I mean, I was getting into radio at the time, and you could do shows on this, and the theories were endless. Having said that, I do remember people that saw this so-called soundless, dead quiet black helicopters and the cattle mutilations and everything that went with it. And it wasn't just in Alamosa. This was Front Range stuff that people were talking about. How much?
Colorado was hit very hard, for sure.
Big time. So there were two things that were going on, and someday I'll tell you a story that I was told by the guy that was part of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation about a certain case. But how much of this do you think really? I have no faith and trust in the government, less in the CIA, and I mean the beat goes on. How much do you really put into technology and testing things out and using us as doofuses? That we're simply being tested ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the reason why we might not see full disclosure, like ever, at least in my lifetime, because if there were indeed, and I believe that there were Black Access projects, and I have reasons to believe this as well, documents that I have sent FOIAs for, and just testimony from people that were out there in Elbert County conducting some of these experiments, that they do not want to take liability for perhaps thousands of people across the country that were unwitting subjects to some of these experiments. And in fact, out there in Elbert County, as we know, back in the days that, the Air Force kind of owned a lot of that property throughout the Black Forest and that. And still, though, a lot of activity and strange things are happening. So one of the questions for me was always which came first, the military presence or the strange phenomena. And from what I've researched, it feels like the phenomenon through research and articles and just, really digging deep, that it predated the military presence. So it says to me that perhaps the military came out there trying to figure out and understand the phenomenon just like anybody else would try to do. But at the same time, I think, there's reason to believe they were looking at plasma ball technologies and some other unusual things like that were going on. I heard, large arrays under the ground and things like that. So it's not out of the question that they were doing something like that.
There's a make-break point, at least in how I saw the world or see the world. Everybody, I think, was on board with the feds until Jack Kennedy and the beginnings of the war in Southeast Asia, through Watergate, through everything. And all of a sudden, I mean, just, your average Joe, myself, I realized this government lies to me. And I go on and on and on and on. And then, through Bush and Cheney, they're telling lies. Joe Biden's, they're telling lies. And I thought to myself, I no longer, and this is being an old man, honest to God, Katie, I no longer, if they said it was daylight outside, I'd go look. I'm serious. There's a heart attack. I mean, the government lies. The federal government, the state, they lie. And you have to hit a certain wall, I guess, to say, damn, man, they're lying. And so now what? How am I to believe some, quote, official that comes out and says, there's nothing to worry about? What do I do then? That's when I worry.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I mean, and especially when it comes to UFOs, and they have been lying for decades, over 70 years on this topic.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me when we bring out known disinformation officers, I mean, because this has, been exposed to the years, Richard Doty and others that have come and kind of muddied the waters and intentionally said, oh, we want you to believe it's UFOs and, little green men and not our own tech out there. So why should we believe them now?
Yes.
And so I'm in the same boat. I think the best bit of advice I could give to your listeners is to go do your research and your homework for yourself. And one thing, I know it's a lost art, but there's a lot of great archives, and some of the best archives on this topic are within driving distance for Coloradoans, from the American Heritage Center in Laramie that houses Richard Haynes' collection and Dr. Sprinkle's collection. Richard Haynes focused on commercial pilots, military pilots, private pilots, and there's boxes upon boxes of data you can go look at yourself. And it'll change your mind about this topic, I'm pretty certain. Like, if I ever, go, well, maybe there's nothing to UFOs, just go visit the archives, and I think your mind will be changed.
It is not, how do you end up somewhere in your thinking? Our guest is Katie Paige about Snippy the horse. And in the last hour, we had a caller, and he brought up Whitey Bulger. And as a guy who reads all this stuff, hey, any of those guys, I mean, there's a book out called Chaos that I really, really like about, what happened with the Manson people. And because I've been lied to so many times, why not,
right.
Why do, and something that would be this huge. I mean, if you're going to lie on Whitey Bulger and Charlie, my God, what are you going to do if these people legitimately are doing what they're doing? And then the Rocky Flats case that I got to be familiar with, and I mean, they were lying what they were doing to those Front Range people and guys that got sick working there. They told lies. They lied about Agent Orange. They lied, just go down a list of things. You're telling lies. Now we come down to mutilated horses and cattle. Why would they not lie? I mean, what's in it for them to tell the truth if they're doing it?
Right, right. I think in this case, what's really interesting, one of the big cases, was the Socorro, New Mexico case out there, and there was a lot of similarities between the Socorro case and the Snippy the horse case, and it's just as far as ground trace evidence and things like that. So what's interesting is we do know that they gathered evidence from the Snippy the horse case, and like so much of this stuff, it gets sent to the Condon Committee, they give it to the Air Force, and then it disappears. And we do know they probably have more answers than we believe they might.
So. How do people get the book?
You can find it on Amazon. So just type in Snippy the horse, and it's out there on Amazon. And I have to tell you, the photographs in that book and just the history of the San Luis Valley is worth the cost of the book, just to see those photos, because we have, like I said, never seen pictures of Snippy as a cult. And then we have pictures. What's really interesting, the four horses, the Smokey died the week before Snippy, but there were maps and drawings and the original calendars from back in the day and audio recordings. But you can see a map.
Katie,
and
I hate to interrupt.
Okay.
We're at a break. Let me put you on hold and I'll bring you back on the other side. We'll do that. Our guest is Katie Paige. The book is Snippy. And then we got open lines. Then we got Jerry Schimmel, and the beat goes on. Saturday morning, 7:10 KNUS. I'm Peter Boyles. Thanks for being here and listening. 72 the high, 70 Sunday, 63 on Monday. This is Radio Free Denver. Good old 710 KNUS.
Your 710 5-day forecast. This Saturday, going to have gorgeous sunny skies in the Denver metro and high temps in the low 70s. Going to keep it dry and clear tonight with lows in the mid 40s. Upper 60s Sunday. Lots of sun during the day, but do expect increasing clouds in the afternoon. Sunday night into Monday morning. A slight chance for some passing rain showers on the plains. Little light snow in the foothills. Lows upper 30s. Monday back to partly sunny skies. Highs low 60s. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Saturday morning, everybody. 25 October 2025. 72 the high, 43 tonight, and 70 on Sunday, and 63 Monday. Great guest. Coming up, Jerry Schimmel. Coming in, I don't know if Jerry's in studio or a phoner at noon. And he's a phoner, and a lot has happened at KOA. They blew out their morning guy, and they let Jerry go, and what is going on. And, of course, we'll talk to Jerry about the scandal, NBA scandal, and also a career at KOA and working for the Rockies. He's such a good man. David Ellis, Cherry Creek, you've heard me talking to you about taking your valuables to David Ellis to get a fortune in cash and secure an appraisal from David for all the valuables you have tucked away in your home. And it's still true. Share the other reasons to see David, just in case you don't have a Rolex watch, rare coins, or a silver tea set. See David Ellis for your most meaningful gift-giving occasions. David Ellis Jewelers, just the right item, just the right price for special people that mean the most to you. An antique watch, an emerald pendant, a gold necklace, a diamond ring. This trusted jeweler has been buying precious metals and antiques in Colorado for decades. Dazzling cases filled with hundreds of new and used pieces that your loved ones will treasure. He's my friend. See David Ellis. Visit David. See his jeweler. See for yourself. Look into the black awning. Here you see the black awning on the corner of 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek. That's where obviously the store is. Explore DavidEllisJewelry.com or call my friend David Ellis, 303-322-8779. He's there 6 days a week. He's there now. Tell David I sent you. Visit David Ellis Jewelers. See for yourself. Look for the black awning on the corner of 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek, or call 303-322-8779. Our guest is terrific. This is about, it's more than Snippy the horse, but it's about Snippy and taking people back to October of 67, September, October 67, and a mutilation that triggers a lot of this. Hey, I tell you what, I'm going to ask you something. Have you personally ever seen anything unexplained or inexplicable? Have you seen anything?
Yeah, many things, actually. I mean, I did spend 3 years visiting on and off that mysterious Rocky Mountain Ranch there in Elbert County at the height of all this. One thing, though, with doing Beyond Skinwalker for History Channel has allowed me to really meet locals that are living around that area now. And one of the questions, I'm like, are animal mutilations still going on? And the answer to that, Peter, is yes, they are. Not to the height as what we experienced back in the 60s and 70s, but certainly ranchers are still experiencing this phenomenon. Even out there in Trinidad with Tom and Sally Miller, who've had many of their animals mutilated throughout the decades, they still in that area are reporting mysterious animal deaths as well. So it's still continuing to this day. Not only that, but of course, Colorado MUFON still has a continuous influx of reports coming in of unusual things flying around our skies. So Colorado has a rich history of unexplained events.
This is off the YouTube. This question that came into us, 31 Atlas. I don't know what 31 Atlas is. Do you or can you talk about it?
Yeah, so it is the third interstellar object that is coming into our atmosphere right now. That's what the 3 stands for. It is, I believe it's 3 to 7 miles long, so it's very large. And I'm not sure how they know, but it's fairly heavy in nickel. And, of course, there's people out there that believe that it could be, a spacecraft of some sort. Now, I don't believe that. I think it's truly just a comet that's entering our atmosphere. And it could be an interesting Halloween because I do believe it makes its closest orbit around our planet around Halloween, around October 30th. So if it is something unusual, which I tend to think it's not, then it could be an interesting Halloween this year. But yeah, it's an interesting comet to say the least.
The book Snippy the horse, and you got onto it through meeting people and relationships, and to wrap. I mean, you have to come to some conclusions with this life work of yours, and so I'm going to ask you to do that as we wrap it up. What is your conclusions, perhaps, about all of this?
Yeah, my conclusion is we're living in a very mysterious world, and many of us experience things we can't explain. So it begs a question like the nature of reality itself. You can go deep down in that, whether we can manifest some of these, ghostly things, paranormal things, UFO things. And also a big chunk of it is, secret military, secret projects, hidden technologies, free energy, things like that. So I think it's both things going on simultaneously, and there's not a simple answer.
When people say that can't be, I always say the Manhattan Project, they hid the atomic bomb. And that was, think about it. And then the things that have been hidden, but the atomic bomb, it was called Manhattan Project with under FDR, and they hid the creating of this war-ending threat that exists in the world now, and it was hidden away. So why not, right?
Right. Yeah, and then we have compartmentalization of Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and General Electric, and a lot of our aero tech companies are hiding some of these technologies, and you can't FOIA them. You can't get the information. So secrets are easily kept when you compartmentalize them.
I always liked the line Benjamin Franklin had. He said, 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. It's a great line.
That's right.
It's a wonderful line. It's now used by another organization as their motto, but 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Leave us with something. And again, how to get the book. First of all, do that, and then leave us with something that you want us to think.
Yeah, I'd like to leave you guys with keeping an open mind, do your own research, do your own homework, and a big passion of mine is history, historical cases. Educate yourself on the history of ufology in the state of Colorado. It's steeped with that. Visit archives, read books, but certainly you can find the Snippy book and others. Again, it's written by Tony Angiola and Katie Paige on Amazon. And please check out my YouTube channel. I have a lot of videos there, behind-the-scenes videos on Rocky Mountain Ranch research with Katie Paige on YouTube. So please check that out as well.
Happy Halloween. You're the best. Thanks for doing the show. Be safe. We'll meet. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, you're welcome. Katie Paige, everybody. All right, we go to open lines, 303-696-1971. We opened the show with the hitman, Joe Williams, talking about this NBA scandal, the organized crime, Chauncey Billups. And then we rolled into Katie Paige. We have open lines for an hour after this segment, and then we go with Jerry Schimmel. All right, so 303-696-1971. Good morning, everyone. I think the obvious question is, gee, I'm sure you trust the government. Dink, 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 question mark. It's gotten worse for me as opposed to going, oh, that makes it better. It's only gotten worse. And when you see something like this, and I had, and like we all had, you had that one moment where perhaps you saw something. And the rest is, of course, what do you think this is? And, of course, in open lines, we can talk about Chauncey Billups and talk about the NBA scandal, horse and cattle mutilations. And I wrote a new column that just dropped in the Cherry Creek Chronicle that's going to already taken some heat, and we can talk about that. You can read it. You go to our website, 710knus.com, click on Peter Boyles and scroll down to the columns and click on this one. And I titled it, Do You Remember the Day You Had a Choice? So it's all yours, 303-696-1971. And Adam's clearing the calls. We'll get a name here in just a second. Pretty good-looking day headed our way. 72 will be the high, and tomorrow's 70. I didn't ride. It's the first time I've been ridden into work, and it was cold this morning. It was 39 degrees, and I thought, come on, drive the truck. So here we go. Nick in Denver. You're on the radio show Saturday morning. Good morning. Lines are open. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking my call. I was just off the top of my head, I could think of half a dozen reasons why the authorities or the people in power would like to suppress any kind of information in this area. Because if it's true that there are other people out there who probably a lot smarter than us, it will completely change everything we know about everything.
You bet. You bet. And deeply religious people can't even begin to deal with this. It would throw them off. It would throw off what we think. It would throw off what, any number. No, but you're absolutely right. I mean, we kind of stride the earth thinking that we're the big cheese, right? What if these guys show up and we're not?
It would definitely deflate a lot of egos.
Oh, whew. And there was a really interesting book years and years ago. I had a guy on the show, and it was called Out There. And, what's out there? And, hey, how can we really be alone? The universe is so vast you can't comprehend it. I can't comprehend it. Maybe somebody else can, but I can't. And you think to yourself, it doesn't end. Having said that, what possibly could show up here looking for us?
Well, that's true. They could just kind of look at us and go, well, I don't want to get involved here, and just move on.
Or it is us. We are doing it to, the untrustworthy government mutilates animals or, whatever it does to find out what the score is. And so when the government comes out on any and all levels and said it ain't us, that's when I'll ultimately say, of course it is. So,
Well, the problem. The government has lied to us so many times that they've lost all credibility about just about everything.
Bingo. And I'm trying to put this together. The 60s, and this is a big deal how I see it, but the 60s don't begin until 1963 when John Kennedy is murdered. The 60s don't end until 73, 74 when Richard Nixon resigns. That's the 60s. And out of that comes everything that we live with today. And then after it sort of goes to ground, Bush and Cheney telling the biggest lies. And how many lies do you think Joe Biden told? And it's just this series of events that I can mark in my own life that these people tell lies. And they do it with a smile on their face. I don't believe.
Well, you've heard the old line. You know when a politician is lying.
That's right.
It's when their lips are moving.
Yeah. No. Who was it? Was it Sly Stone or somebody that did? No. It was when they smile on your face. Everybody's trying to take your place. The backstabbers. I mean, when I was gearing up to do this show, and I read about that, but then it dawned on me. Why would anyone believe this government? Why?
Or any government, for that matter.
I mean, I think there were times that perhaps this government may have been believable, but certainly not after the Kennedys, not after that murder and the rest of it that comes with it. And just, I think, oh, come on. You expect.
However, the good news as far as all this electronic media is concerned and all the advances we've made in science, it's harder and harder for them to lie.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that
you don't think so. Well,
Well, I think there's a more sophisticated way of doing it, and I think now with the new medias, if we think we've gotten better, they've gotten better.
Well, maybe I should have said, well, it's harder to hide the fact that they've lied.
Now you catch them. I mean, when they're caught, they lie. You take care. Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. We go to Mary, 303-696-1971. Hey, Mary, you're on the show.
Hey, Peter Boyles. It's always good to talk to you. I'm so grateful you're back.
Thanks.
Are you gonna dress up as the one-eyed man for Halloween?
No, Halloween. I mean, my grandson has now gotten to the point where he goes with his buddies. So Halloweening. Is that music playing someplace? No, it's on your. Anyhow, no. I love Halloween. It's the gateway. It's the gateway holiday. You got and Mary, you got a phone on somewhere that you're hearing?
No, I'm not hearing anything.
Okay,
well,
we're hearing stuff.
Or a little echo or something,
okay.
Maybe. But I was going to ask you about, are you going to do the haunted house stuff, sleep tonight with the spook?
No, I was telling somebody about that. We're really getting an echo, guys. I don't know where it's coming from. But long story short, I invented the night in the haunted house, and it really, really worked. It's one of the things that I did at KHOW and 710 KNU. Well, actually, it started here at 710, but when I took it to KHOW, it's kind of goofball here with this echo. There it is. And I would go and spend the night in haunted houses, and it got so big that other people went along, and then we ended up, if you wanted to go along, we sold. You could spend the night in our haunted house wherever we was selected, and we would give the money to Step 13. And it was, I mean, thanks for bringing that up, because that was, I don't know how many years we did that. 15 had to be, maybe more. And it was great. Thank you for knowing that stuff.
I think you could do that again for Step 13.
Well, now it's Step Denver, but it's like
we were friends of Bob Lee too.
Oh my!
And I wish we got to know him better, but he would come to Holy Ghost Church, and he thought my husband was a priest because he had an altar boy costume on, and well, I mean, he was a giant altar boy. But at any rate, yeah, I wish we would have known more about Bob Lee. But
you got the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. Again, that was the time. Hey, Mary, thank you. Happy Halloween. Thanks.
All right,
everybody. 303-696-1971. The boss says we take a break. Lines are open, and it's, again, open lines, 303 is Catch as Catch Can. This is Radio Free Denver, 710 KNUS. Saturday, October 25, 2025. We won't get a Halloween show in because it's such a far off week in terms of Halloween. It's the Friday is Halloween. This is the 25th. 72 the high, I said, and 70 on Sunday. It's beautiful weather, and I hope we hold it up for Halloween night. Looks pretty good. It says for Halloween, 61 degrees and cloudy and dry. So 303-696-1971. I'm getting all these, what's that woman talking about, haunted houses, getting these texts. This really begins, it's interesting having the woman on Paige talking about cattle mutilations. If you recall, there used to be two sort of underground newspapers in Denver. One was, and remains the king, was, of course, Westwood, Patricia Calhoun's. There was another one called Up the Creek. And you got to be old like me to remember Up the Creek. And it was a newspaper that came out and was an alternative press, perhaps. And so there's an article in there about this guy that has a ranch that he claims there was a mutilation. Well, this is when mutilations are really rolling. So I knew the guy that ran Up the Creek, and I contacted him. I said, give me the guy's phone number. And we called the guy, and he said, I'd be glad to do your show. And came in. He was kind of a one-off guy, but it went well. And then I said, well, could we come out there and see your ranch? And I got into, could I spend the night? And because he claimed that these things that mutilated cows, and they came out of a closet, this is a long way around the barn. But the guy said, yeah. So now you got to go. And I was working with the late Jim Turner, kicker for the Jets, if you remember JT, the late Alan Dumas, who was working at Westward, and just a brilliant. Well, I miss Alan to this day. And Alan worked for Patricia, and believe it or not, Ward Lucas from Channel 9. And one of Ward's hobbies was he was a paranormal investigator. In fact, he was a debunker. So he wanted to go. And I called the guy up and I said, hey, man, can I bring a team? Oh, yeah, sure. And I forget who was our site engineer for that show and what it took to do remotes then. It took a little work. So I drove out there, and it really was like Albert County. And everybody shows up. And JT shows up. All these people are now gone. JT's gone, and the late Alan Dumas, and of course we lost Ward recently. And my producer at the time went, and so this guy gives us this tour, and all of his neighbors are coming around. It's like The Shining. And Ward Lucas says to me, he said, they're going to pull something on us in the middle of the night. Well, my spider sense goes up. And the bedroom where allegedly the beings came through and I said, can I sleep there? And they said, well, yeah, of course. So everybody now wants to go sleep in the same room, which I was pretty comfortable with. And about, that night about 11 o'clock, Ward Lucas, who I adored, I just loved Ward Lucas, he's stringing what we used to call tripwires. He's stringing tripwires in the hallway. And I said, what are you doing? He said, they're going to come tonight. And now I'm going like, what? And Dumas and one of the guys from Westward, they slept in a tent. They slept outside. There was a sliding door to the outside of this man's home, and Dumas and the other guy slept in a tent. So I'm sure that the now legal substance was being used. And so I don't know what time it was, late at night, and I hear a bunch of yelling and screaming going on, and I get up and open. And anyhow, so these folks had this big dog. The dog was great, just a nice dog, big head. Well, these guys are on Jupiter, and the dog sticks his head in the tent. And they think, now they're already pre-set up for, an event. So the tent stands up, and it's on. Anyhow, so that gets all settled down, and we get some sleep and get up. And I come downstairs, and there's three guys that I don't know who they are. This is for the radio book. And the guy's name is Bela. I remember his first name, and I'm going to say Scribner was his last name, but Bela I remember. And they were the Rocky Mountain Debunkers. They were the Paranormal Debunkers. And they had a title, and that's the title I remember, and I'm sure it's not the right one. I said, "What do you?" I introduced myself, and they're drinking coffee, sitting on a wall. And they said, "We snuck in here last night to make sure that nobody's going to do anything to you." So we did the radio show, and the guy that owned the place was a little upset that Bela and these guys had shown up, and that Dumas. Anyhow, I think we're on to something. The thing had numbers, so I go back, and this was a summer. This was in the summer, and I come up with this idea of the night in a haunted house. That it's the theme in thousands of movies where teenagers go, "Oh, you sleep in this room, I'll sleep in that." Remember those things? And so I went to I think we were at Cahow, and I went and asked, "Hey, what's this a good idea?" And they're looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" And we went to this place on Larimer Street that had been a brothel and had been all these different things. And if you remember, these are great names, but there was Dennis Gallagher and Tom Noel. And Tom Noel was Mr. Colorado. Remember him as a historian? And the same thing with Dennis Gallagher. And Dennis Gallagher was great. He had held offices in Denver politics, and he was a consummate Irishman, and he taught all these different things. And I just loved him. And he was auditor, but they were both really great Denver historians, City of Denver historians. And they would tell us about these haunted places. And so I went and met with these people, and the people who worked there said, "Oh yeah, we hear noise upstairs at nights, and we smell cigarette smoke and hear piano playing and all these different things." And I said, "Well, that's obviously the place that I should be spending the night." And they had said that this Chinese prostitute was murdered up there, and they saw her. So I signed up, and I spent the night alone on the top floor of this one-time place. And I just, and it drew so many people. So I said, we're on to something. So we took off from there, and the guys who really made the show work were Kenny Danon and Darryl Luby, and we always got the green light from Lee, and we did these shows, and tons of people. And then I got the idea, well, why don't we sell this and give the money to Bob Cote at Step 13? So we did. And it was great. So we did those for years and years and years and years. No, nothing. I never saw anything, never happened to me. And one more bit of the story, and he's a great friend, and I still see him, and we still talk. You remember Scott Hastings that played in the NBA, worked as a sports talk host with Dave Logan over at KOA, and then went on to work now as the voice of the NBA. Scotty and I mean, we're buddies. And so we were in, I think, Croak Patterson, which was one of the places we went back to, I think, 2 times. And so by this time, it's gotten pretty popular, and it was before iHeart. It was Clear Channel. They would hire cops to watch the doors, and they'd sweep the place. And they said, "Is anybody left?" And Scotty, I remember Scotty saying, I got to get Kenny and Darryl to ask, but I think Scotty said, "There's an old man down there on the couch." I think he was the one who said it, but there was no old man down there on the couch. And everybody claimed that they were taken, that things happened to them. But I can honestly say, after all of those years and all those haunted places, nothing ever happened to me. But they were great shows. They were fun to do. And we had the great folks. We had Dennis with us and Tom Noel with us and all the guys, Scott Hastings and his crew. And it was just fun stuff. And it led into Halloween. Having said that, if it's break time, all right, Peter, we'll take calls when we return. It is, actually, it's 10:54. Next hour is open line, so we'll have plenty of time to take everybody's calls and get this rolling. 710 KNUS.